I'm going to be ranking red flags in women that are style-based. So these are red flags that you can literally physically see as soon as you look at a woman. And this is just the first video in this series. I've already made more videos about different kinds of red flags women exhibit, like behavioral red flags and red flags pertaining to hobbies and lifestyle choices. So I'll be releasing those soon. But for now, these are the biggest red flags you can see in a woman's style choices. And listen up, because some of these might not be so obvious. Like, of course, everybody already knows that if a woman has a septum piercing, she might as well just be wearing a giant billboard saying, "Stay away, I have borderline personality disorder." But I promise, there's probably at least a couple things on this list you haven't thought of, and there might even be some things you disagree with. So here we go. Okay, so we'll just start it off with the most obvious one, and I already mentioned this, but yeah, let's talk about septum piercings. For some reason, the septum piercing seems to be the go-to body modification for any girl that wants to make sure everybody knows she's a hardcore progressive. I don't actually have anything against people with left-leaning political views, but I do have something against people that are extremely opinionated and loud about their views. And when a woman has a septum piercing, there's at least a 97% chance that she's going to be very, very loud about her political opinions. And they're probably going to be some pretty dumbass opinions too. A septum piercing is like a woman's way of saying to the world, "Hey, I'm here and I don't understand the concept of nuance at all, but I do have opinions that I know I'm right about, and I'm gonna tell you all about them. And if you disagree with me, you're a fucking fascist." There's actually a meme about septum piercings that's been going around lately. It's called septum theory or nose ring theory, and it's basically just the idea that women with septum piercings tend to be crazy. And I mean, yeah, it's true. This really shouldn't be a shocking revelation. Just look at what a septum piercing is. It's a relatively uncommon facial piercing that historically has always been associated with edgy alternative subcultures. The entire point behind a septum piercing is to piss off your grandparents and let the world know, "Look at me, I'm different, I'm a rebel." It's an antisocial body modification by design. So it really should not be surprising that the type of person drawn to this type of body modification is also the type of person to have a whole host of personality disorders. Also, if I can just speak frankly for a moment here, making yourself look ugly and retarded on purpose, it's the ultimate attention-seeking behavior. And like I said, the whole point is to be antisocial. That is the reason women get this kind of piercing. Septum piercings are also just associated with feminism and progressive politics at this point, so in a lot of cases, bitches be getting a septum pierced as a way of trying to fit in with a certain group. So it's not necessarily completely antisocial, it's just antisocial towards the 90% of the population that are not ideologically radical. And just to be clear, I'm not saying that anybody that agrees with some feminist or progressive ideas is necessarily radical, but if you're going so far as to actually get a piercing in order to signal your political views to everybody that happens to lay their eyes upon you, then in that case, obviously you are radical. And you're also insufferable, probably very annoying, and you're also a loser. And by the way, if you're watching this and you're thinking about leaving a comment like,
Well, actually, anthropologically speaking, the Bibbidi Bobbidi peoples of the South Chimbala River Valley have been wearing septum piercings since the Bronze Age.
Then just shut up, close your laptop, and go watch some baseball or something, you fucking nerd. But yeah, septum piercings are a resounding S tier red flag. Okay, so next up, let's talk about ear gauges. And I promise this whole video isn't just going to be me talking about different kinds of piercings. This is the last one, actually. But I figured if I'm going to be talking about septum piercings, then I need to mention ear gauges too, because they are similar in terms of how physically unappealing they are, and they are both a kind of alternative edgy style, so to speak. But there is a big difference in that, unlike the septum piercing, ear gauges never became a go-to signifier for any political disposition. So I do think if a woman has giant ass holes in her earlobes, then obviously, yes, that is a huge red flag. But it doesn't necessarily mean that she's absolutely bonkers. However, yeah, like I said, ear gauges are a huge red flag because, one, it looks extremely ugly, and two, a lot of times ear gauges are irreversible. It just depends on how big the gauges are. Now, I'm pretty sure the main reason most women gauge their ears is because they're trying to appeal to a certain kind of man, like skater dudes or punk rockers. But just think, how insane do you have to be to literally do irreversible damage to part of your face just because you have a thing for skater boys? Listen, ladies, all you gotta do is just exist and don't be super fat. I promise, you can get any genre of man you want. Just exist, don't be crazy fat. That's all you gotta do. Maybe wear a punk band t-shirt or something to give you a leg up on the competition, but you really don't need to stretch out your earlobes to the point that they're nearly busting at the seams. Because that actually happens sometimes. These crazy broads gauge their ears so much that their earlobes actually split in two. And when that happens, that is completely irreversible. You can't fix that. So, yeah, ear gauges are a clear sign of impulsive, insane behavior. So, you're best off steering clear when you see it. A tier. Okay, next up is short hair. Now, I don't even need to say this because it's something every man in the world already knows. A priori, it's obvious. Women look a lot better with long hair than they do with short hair. It's the same as how men look better with hair than they do bald. So, when a woman intentionally cuts her hair short, it's a good indication that something is off about her. She might have a personality disorder or a mental illness, or she might even be going through something traumatic in her life, or that's what she wants you to think. You really got to be careful around these basically bald bitches, these half-haired harlots, because it really is the type of thing where a floozy will flounder her most fantastic feature, her full head of thick, beautiful hair. She'll cut it all off just so people will think, oh my God, is she going through trauma? Was she assaulted? Is she terminally ill? Oh my God. They do it just for attention. Sometimes. Of course, I'm not saying that's always the case. If you've ever seen any of my videos before, then you already know I am a practitioner of nuance and a paragon of good faith. So, obviously, I know that sometimes a good girl might just make a one-off bad decision, but generally speaking, when a woman has short hair, that is a red flag, and it is a good sign that that woman might be crazy in one way or another. With that said, A haircut is not a permanent thing, so I do think it's actually a very high proportion of the female population that tries it out at least once in their life. And you really can't blame someone just for trying something out once. So it often is the case that women with short hair are crazy, but not always. And at least it's not a permanent thing. So short hair is in the C tier. All right, so we talked about short hair, but what about dyed hair? Specifically, I want to talk about when a woman dyes her hair an unnatural color like blue, green, purple, or anything like that. You might think unnaturally dyed hair would be about equal to short hair in terms of how big a red flag it is, but actually, dyed hair is much, much worse. Unnaturally dyed hair is a red flag for all the same reasons that short hair is a red flag. But the reason dyed hair is actually worse is because unnaturally colored hair is heavily associated with progressive radicalism and being what they call a woke scold. And again, just to be clear, I know that the majority of people with left-leaning views or progressive views are not radical. I could easily be friends with someone that considers themselves a progressive, and I could even see myself being in a happy relationship with a progressive woman. But women or men that dye their hair weird colors like bright orange or turquoise, they tend to be the type of person that is very easily offended. And nobody wants to feel like they're walking on eggshells around their bitch. I mean, regular bitches are bad enough with how quick they are to get offended by things like not remembering her dog's birthday or whatever. But when you got a bitch with blue hair, that's the type of bitch that'll call you a fascist just because you did a funny impression of a Chinese guy or something. Like, excuse me, am I not allowed to have a little fun when I'm ordering takeout? But seriously, unnaturally colored hair is an enormous red flag because it really is well established at this point that getting your hair dyed some silly color is just something people do to let everyone know they're insufferably woke. So if a woman has green hair, unless she's literally a K-pop idol, she will be offended if you refer to sitting on the floor with your legs crossed as sitting Indian style. And that's not something that a reasonable person gets offended at. So, unnaturally colored hair is an A tier red flag. Hey, by the way, if you do not like and subscribe, you're gay. Not that there's anything wrong with that. Also, I just wanted to say real quick, hey mom, I already told you to stop watching my videos, so fuck you. Respect my privacy. I'm not a fan of women wearing makeup at all. I think makeup should just be reserved for clowns. However, obviously, makeup is ubiquitous in our society. Pretty much every woman wears some form of makeup, so I'm not going to act like the mere act of wearing makeup is a red flag. It's more so just a byproduct of the sick society we're living in. However, some chicks are really doing too much with the makeup. Every now and then, I'll see a girl just walking around the grocery store looking like she ran her face through some kind of Snapchat filter or something, and it's just like, ma'am, do you know how retarded you look right now? You should be ashamed. So the red flag I'm talking about here is when a woman wears heavy makeup, okay? Too much makeup. And there's actually two different versions of heavy makeup that I frequently see, but both of them are red flags. The first is when a woman's just plain wearing too much damn makeup. Like, you can tell it's just caked on thick, and you might even be able to smell it if she's standing next to you in line or something. And the other version of heavy makeup is when she just intentionally tries to do something special with her makeup, like she's trying to do a cat eyeliner thing or some kind of goth shit or, like black lipstick or something like that. It's just a bit antisocial and it reeks of insecurity. However, with all that said, heavy makeup isn't really a big deal compared to most of the other red flags on this list, so it is a red flag, don't get me wrong, but it's just makeup. It washes off. So I'm gonna put this one in the D tier. Okay, so one of the reasons I ranked heavy makeup in the D tier is just because makeup is a temporary thing, so it's not something that necessarily requires a woman to make life-altering, impulsive decisions. So you might think that same logic would apply to the way a woman dresses, but that's actually not the case. The way a woman dresses actually can be a huge red flag. And in particular, what I'm talking about here is when a woman dresses provocatively in public. A lot of women are in denial about this, but seriously, ladies, I'm about to spit some truth, so you might want to listen up. When a woman dresses provocatively, any man that sees her is going to assume that however provocatively she is dressed, that's equivalent to how promiscuous she is. And that will set a permanent impression for any man that sees her. So if a girl that dresses modestly 99% of the time decides one day to go out to the park wearing yoga shorts and a sports bra, well, even if that was just a one-off thing, every man that sees her, even if he already knows her, every man that sees her dressed like that is going to assume that she gives it up freely. Well, gives it up for Chad, anyways. And in most cases, when you see a woman dressed like that, you would probably be correct to make that assumption. But even in those rare cases where an actual non-floozy just decides to dress like a floozy for a day or for whatever reason, that's still a big red flag. And it should be. Because it's a matter of reputation. No guy wants to be dating a girl that everybody thinks is a floozy, even if he knows it's not true. Because if everyone thinks his girl is a get-around-town kind of gal, then everybody's going to think that he is a pathetic simp. So even if a woman is truly chaste and modest in her behavior, if she does things that will obviously cause everyone to think that she gets around, then she obviously does not care much for her reputation or for the reputation of her family and potential partners. So that's bad. That's a red flag. Dressing provocatively, dressing in revealing clothing, it's just a form of self-degrading, self-destructive behavior. And it's a sign of deeper emotional issues. And obviously, nobody wants to date a girl that has deep emotional issues. Now, with everything I've said so far, you'd probably expect me to put this one in at least the A tier. But look, I've said it before and I'll say it again. I am a fair and nuanced commentator, okay? So I do understand that these days it is becoming increasingly more difficult for women to find moderate clothing. Stores hardly even carry anything other than crop tops and yoga pants these days. And the only options for women's swimwear these days is thongs. So, I mean, of course, any woman can dress modestly if she wants to, but it actually might take a bit of effort. And on top of that, just with where our culture is at right now, revealing clothing is very normalized. And no matter who you are, going against the grain of whatever's considered normal by society standards, that is a hard thing to do. I mean, just look at female track athletes' uniforms at the collegiate level. They literally wear thong bikini bottoms and crop tops. That's the official uniform. I'm sure they would let a girl wear some regular gym shorts if she really wanted, but, Nobody wants to be the only one wearing a different uniform. So, if we lived in a more healthy society, dressing provocatively would easily go in the A tier. But because of this sick, disgusting world we're living in, where all this shit is normalized, I'm gonna say dressing provocatively is a B tier red flag. Alright, let's talk about tattoos. Now, first things first, obviously there is a big difference between a girl that has one tiny tattoo on a part of her body that is usually covered and a girl that has two full arm sleeves or a neck tattoo or one of those chest chandelier tattoos. So it's hard to rank tattoos as a red flag in just one specific tier. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to separate tattoos into three categories: moderate, medium, and severe. And yes, even if a girl only has one tiny little itsy bitsy teensy weensy tattoo, that's still a red flag. I know this is a kind of controversial opinion, but it's actually kind of funny to me how virtually everybody, even tattoo lovers, will admit that certain tattoos are a red flag. Like, pretty much everyone will admit that if a woman has a face tattoo, that's a big red flag. Something's wrong with her, obviously. Or if a woman has a lower back tattoo, the classic tramp stamp. Most people, even people that have tattoos themselves, most people will admit that a tramp stamp is a red flag. But whenever I say, actually, every tattoo is a tramp stamp, it's all a red flag, suddenly people get all up in arms like, well, that's preposterous. How dare you pass judgment on what somebody else chooses to do with their body? That's just preposterous. But whatever. That's just the normie brain at work. Honestly, I wish my thought process was that simple. It would probably make life a lot easier. But anyways, we'll start with the most severe form of tattoos. If a woman is just covered head to toe in tattoos, or if she has face tattoos or throat tattoos or any kind of overly antisocial tattoos, like a tattoo of a pentagram on the back of her hand, for example, then it's safe to say that that woman has severe mental issues. She is undoubtedly not emotionally stable, and you should absolutely steer clear. She's crazy. I mean, it's hard to even imagine what kind of mentality a person would have to make them permanently mark their body in such an antisocial way like that. It is attention-seeking behavior of the highest order, to the degree that, if you're that desperate to always be the center of attention everywhere you go, there's gotta be some kind of sociopathic insecurity going on there. It's hard for me to even talk about it because the act of disfiguring your own body so severely as to cover it in tattoos, it's just so alien and repulsive that no properly functioning human brain can actually even conceive of it. If a woman has tattoos to a severe level, that is an S tier red flag. And look, honestly, if a woman has even a medium level of tattoos, that's not much better. And by the way, I'm defining a medium level of tattoos as any single tattoo of large proportions, like a sleeve or a chest tattoo or a large thigh tattoo. Or if a woman has more than 2 tattoos, even if they're all tiny and in subtle locations. If a woman has 3 or more tattoos, she's automatically at least in medium territory. Having a medium level of tattoos is a red flag for pretty much all the same reasons it's a red flag for a woman to have a severe level of tattoos. But, it's just a bit less of a red flag because, well, it just goes to reason that the more mentally messed up someone is, the more that manifests itself physically through impulsive tattoos or whatever other forms of red flags a person exhibits. I realize it's actually very common these days for even the most normal of normies to have a medium level of tattoos, but that does not mean that it is not a red flag. We live in a very sick society, and a whole lot of the people living in this society are sick. And that's why tattoos are so common. So a medium level of tattoos is an A-tier red flag. Okay, so what about if a girl just has like one small tattoo? Well, yeah, that is still a red flag, but obviously not as big a red flag. And I think I've already described well enough why tattoos are a red flag, so I'm not going to expound on it anymore here. But if a woman just has like one or two small tattoos, that is a B-tier red flag. B for be on guard around these crazy bitches. Okay, next up is something kinda similar to tattoos, but probably worse in most cases. Scars. Specifically, I'm talking about when a woman has scars on her arms or legs that she clearly put there herself, on purpose. It goes without saying, anybody that would intentionally scar themselves like that is obviously mentally ill, and I sincerely hope that they can get the help they need to overcome whatever it is they're dealing with. But as a man, if I'm trying to decide whether or not a woman would make a good partner, if I can see that she has a history of causing physical harm to herself, then I think it's only responsible to recognize that as a sign that she would absolutely not make a good, stable partner. I don't really have anything else to say about this one. If a woman has scars of that sort, then that is an S-tier red flag. Okay, so this is another one that's probably going to be a bit controversial because I think most men would agree, in general, when a woman works out regularly, does cardio, and lifts weights, that is a big green flag. You know, it's a good thing. However, if a woman lifts weights to the point that she's actually noticeably muscular, that is a red flag. Now, obviously, I'm sure most men would agree there's something wrong with a woman that's like bodybuilder status. You know, when they get all roided up to the point that they're pretty much indistinguishable from a man. That's obviously not something that any heterosexual man finds attractive. But in my opinion, the red flag starts a lot earlier than that. Pretty much, if a woman has noticeable forearm vascularity, or if she has defined biceps, triceps, or deltoids, it just looks disgusting. And it's also indicative of deeper mental or emotional issues, because at that point, all she's doing is making herself look more like a man. And in probably 90% of cases, if a woman is lifting regularly, keeping her diet perfect, and doing everything right, she's still not going to get to the point of actually being red flag muscular. Most women that are actually visibly muscular are on some sort of PEDs. And in this sick society we currently live in, look, I'll just say it. When a woman is noticeably muscular, you kinda do have to question whether or not she actually is But anyways, for an example of what I'm talking about, look up pictures of the fitness influencer Lean Beef Patty. In her videos, she doesn't actually look that bad, so she definitely uses deceptive lighting and posing techniques in her photos, but yeah. If a woman looks like this, red flag. B-tier red flag, to be exact. Okay, so being too muscular is a red flag, but what about the opposite of that? What if a woman is fat? Well, yeah, that's a red flag too. However, you have to give the fat girls a little more leeway just because our whole society is sedentary. Our streets aren't even designed to accommodate pedestrians, so you can't even burn calories by walking to the store or whatever. You literally have to drive pretty much anywhere if you want to get anywhere. And to top it all off, we are surrounded by unhealthy, processed slop everywhere we go. Of course, it is possible to eat healthy on a budget, and it's also very possible to stay fit just by doing a little bit of cardio and not just gorging yourself on Hot Pockets and Ben & Jerry's all the time. So it's still a red flag for a woman to be too fat. I'm just saying, I understand how a regular mentally stable person can get to that point. So being fat isn't always the worst red flag. Especially considering some women do look pretty good even when they're fat. You know, if a girl's got good proportions, even if she's technically obese, if she's got good proportions and she looks good, it's hard to call that a red flag because if she looks good, she looks good. With that said, most women do look their best when they are at a slimmer size, and most fat chicks don't actually have the right proportions to pull off the thick look. So yeah, it's not good, generally speaking, to be fat. The fatter a woman is, the more likely she is to be lazy, or she might have any number of deep-seated issues that are causing her to cope with food. So being fat is a D-tier red flag. Okay, fake nails. Alright, so if a woman wears fake nails, that means she will do it on the first date. Fake nails are like meters for reading how much of a floozy a woman is. The longer the fake nails are, the more of a floozy she is. Also, women with fake nails are crazy, and the craziness also correlates with length. So a woman with long, fake nails? Absolutely bonkers. Crazy. However, fake nails are a bit of a cultural mainstay for certain cultures, so I think it would be a bit racially insensitive to rank this one too high. So fake nails are a D-tier red flag. Okay, that's the video. Please watch part 2 in this video series if you want to know more red flags to look out for in women. And truly, from the bottom of my heart, thank you so much for watching, and please like and subscribe.